Are the goals of ABA and other behavioral interventions really your goals for your child? Watch this video to discover for yourself. Hi. In this video series, I'll be discussing reasons why parents of autistic children should reconsider their dedication to behavioral interventions for their children. In the first part, I will discuss how ABA interventions focus on controlling your child's behavior, not teaching them how to navigate life on their own. ABA stands for Applied Behavior Analysis, a product sold under various guises such as a teaching methodology, therapy, intervention, and most profitably as a treatment for autism. It might also appear in its contemporary, more palatable sounding versions as Positive Behavior Supports, PBS, Naturalistic Developmental Behavioral Intervention, NDBI, and might be recommended by medical and educational authorities as Early Intensive Behavioral Intervention, EIBI, for autistic and other children identified with developmental delays. But what is ABA really, underneath the catchy acronyms and the glowing recommendations? ABA and ABA-based behavioral interventions are a technology for behavior modification used to control and shape a person's behavior, usually that of a child or a disabled adult, to meet standards of appropriateness set by the setting, such as home or school, where the intervention is delivered. It is based on an ideological framework called radical behaviorism, invented by psychologist and social philosopher B.F. Skinner. This is a philosophy that presupposes that all human actions are controlled by external consequences, effectively reducing the child to a reactive organism rather than an agent of their own life. Skinner believed that democratic societies based on the exercise of an illusionary free will by their subjects are doomed to fail and should instead be replaced with engineered societies whose citizens are conditioned from birth using behavior modification to act in ways that are deemed to optimize the society's goals. Skinner positions a behaviorist such as himself as the orchestrator of this society's behavior modification scheme in his fictional work Walden 2, a book that serves as a detailed depiction of how his social dream should play out. While behaviorism itself emerged from psychology as a sub-branch that sought to focus exclusively on externally observable, measurable behavior as a rejection of the study of human and animal cognition, Skinner's radical behaviorism went beyond merely limiting experimental analysis to observable phenomena and declared that the unobservable phenomena inside the human mind, thoughts, feelings, were behaviors themselves that were subject to environmental control. Thoughts and feelings were considered by Skinner to be merely private behaviors governed by the same environmental laws as outward actions, rather than being the cause of them. Radical behaviorism is rooted in a deterministic philosophy, not scientifically proven theory, that all organisms, including humans, lack the agency or free will to choose their actions independent of environmental reinforcement. Their actions are deemed to be entirely controlled by environmental variables. Thus, these variables can be manipulated to control and shape the behavior of organisms into desirable forms. While modern ABA and its derivatives, positive behavior supports, naturalistic behavioral interventions, etc., may claim to use different methods from the original ABA, they have not invented new theories of behavior and continue to be based on Skinner's radical behaviorism. For parents, this means that the goal of behavioral interventions is never to produce a change in how your child thinks, their cognition, feels, their emotion, or senses the world, their perception. Such change would be irrelevant, for these internal processes are deemed to lack causal power by the theories underlying the intervention. The goal is not conceptual understanding, self-awareness, or self-directed action. It is simply to bring the child's behavior under stimulus control. Behavior itself is considered a free operand, a random action that is then shaped into the desired form using reinforcement schedules by the adult in control. Of course, waiting for a random action that has any similarity with the target behavior to occur can take a long time. Therefore, a behaviorist must use most the least prompting, including physical control, to make the child execute the behavior the first time. This action is immediately followed by reinforcement, say momentary access to the child's favorite toy or food. The reinforcement is then assumed to increase the likelihood of said behavior in the future when the stimulus or command to perform said action is present. For example, consider the behavior of turning on a light switch when given the prompt or command to do so. The child's refusal or other behaviors, including social overtures, are considered disruptive and ignored, or extinguished, or punished until the only behavior left to perform is the one desired by the behaviorist. This is then reinforced, and the reinforcement is assumed to make the behavior more likely to occur when the command is given in the future. The problem here is that even if the child does turn on the light on command after several trials within this controlled environment where all other behaviors are disallowed, this teaches the child nothing about why turning on the light might be useful to themselves or others. Besides, it might only work in environments where all other behaviors or actions are disallowed. The narrow focus of this approach is evident in the types of goals that behavior intervention is usually used for. These are proximal, short-term goals involving simple actions or action sequences that are unlikely to generalize to other natural settings that have variables that were not accounted for during the intervention. Also, even when generalization is treated as a goal, it remains the generalization of a mechanical action. The child simply repeats the movement in a new room or with a new person. It is not the generalization of autonomous intent or understanding, social or otherwise. So, your child isn't learning to use light to dispel darkness to improve their functioning. They're learning to turn on the light on command when all other actions are disallowed. Even if the child learns to turn on the light on command in all environments, this could be maladaptive for several reasons. It might prevent them from advocating for dim lighting or darkness when they need to reduce sensory stimulation, or they might be exploited by others into turning on lights in spaces where doing so might be considered wasteful or hurtful to others, like committing a crime because you can't say no when given the command to perform the skill. If the light switch example makes sense to you, perhaps you can then apply that analogy to other goals that are more likely to be on your child's intervention plan. I've often read accounts of parents being elated at seeing their child smile for the first time, or emotionally overwhelmed by receiving a hug from their child for the first time. And these parents attribute their child's progress to behavioral interventions like ABA. Let's look at the hug behavior from a behaviorist perspective. When you tell the behaviorist that you'd like your child to hug you, you probably have in mind, I want my child to express their love to me using a conventional method that I enjoy. I'm not here to critique the morality of that goal itself. That's a different discussion for a different time. But the behaviorist is first going to translate your request into an operationally defined target behavior. Something like, child will extend arms at shoulder width apart, move toward parent, and enclose arms around them. And that's exactly what you're signing up for and spending all your money and your child's time on. That behavior that the behaviorist might euphemistically call a skill. Nowhere in the child's training is any discussion of love or its forms of expression. Such a discussion will require acknowledging that your child has a mind with thoughts and feelings, all of which is rejected as inconsequential by the behaviorist. This assumption that the internal behaviors, the thoughts, feelings, have no causal power over the child's actions or external behaviors is required to justify experimental control in radical behaviorism. An organism's internal life would pose too many uncontrollable variables for an experiment to be valid. So, the radical behaviorist assumes they don't matter, that is, they lack functional significance. To complete the discussion, let us look at using behavioral interventions to teach an academic skill, like naming US presidents when presented with their pictures. Again, the value of this exercise as an educational activity is debatable, but we'll save that discussion for a different day. Luckily, the behaviorist, whose professional certification focuses on the mechanics of behavior change rather than the principles of education or the science of child development, needn't worry about the legitimacy of the goal. Their objective is to make the child perform a behavior. That's it. So, they'll present the child with a photograph and prompt a verbal response of a string of sounds, the name of the person in the photograph, presumably. Initially, the child hears the string of sounds, and when, after much prompting, imitates the verbal behavior, is rewarded with reinforcement. If the environment is sufficiently controlled, after repeated trials, the child's behavior will come under stimulus control. For the behaviorist, this is the definition of learning, not an internal leap of comprehension, but a measurable change in outward performance. Because internal understanding is unobservable, it is treated as irrelevant to the process. So, the child will produce a close approximation to the desired string of sounds, the name, when presented with a matrix of pixels, the image. Again, nowhere in any of this training is a discussion of the purpose of this exercise, its value to the child or others, or even a discussion of the meaning of president, country, politics, or even names. I hope this gave you something to think about. The next time you consult with a behavior analyst, intervention specialist, or educator trained in radical behaviorism, perhaps you will ask for more information about what your child is actually gaining from the plan. You might want to understand the framework behind the skills before submitting your child's development, their identity, and their mental health, along with your own resources and conscience, to a system that may disregard them entirely. Thank you.